live on purpose. And for me, it has a double meaning in that you want to live with intention and you're not just haphazardly going through life and watching life happen to you, but also live on purpose in that we all have a purpose. And so how are we making decisions that align with that purpose?
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of As Unexpected Podcast. I'm Scott Marshall, and today's guest is someone who I've kind of known for a long time. I met her in person for the first time just over a year ago, and she may not know this, but she just has this special place in my heart, even though we just haven't spent that much time together. And I suppose in part that's come from really actively listening to what she has posted on LinkedIn. There's so much intentionality, so much kindness, so much generosity in what she presents to the world. And I'm so thankful she's here today. Welcome, Myla.
Thank you, Scott. That was very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Of course. And everything is meant 100%. Myla, if you don't mind, can you provide our audience a bit fuller bio than just that you're one of my favorite people, what your work has been, what your current work is?
Sure. So as Scott mentioned, my name is Myla Edmonds. I am Senior Vice President of R.W. Jones Agency, which is a division of education by Gannett. What we do is align and elevate reputation and revenue for colleges, universities, and educational organizations, which, Scott, as you know right now, is critical. In this capacity, I serve as a fractional chief marketing and communications officer at institutions as they are going through leadership changes. And while I find this work incredibly satisfying and fulfilling and actually fun, it's not the only thing that I do. I also love stories, and so I'm always reading. I love writing. I write novels, short stories, poetry, and inspirational essays. And then my favorite role is being an aunt to some incredible young people. I just adore them. And so that's the most incredible role that I have in my life.
Beautiful. My kids actually have an aunt located where you are sitting now in that city of Portland, Oregon. And she also, I think her very favorite role is to be an aunt. So I get that.
It is a beautiful relationship. I love it.
Yeah. And I have such a deep appreciation and love for my sister in her role as that amazing aunt. So right on for you. And now you serve in this fractional CMO role for institutions. You spend maybe up to a year with them. How does this play a role when you show up? Like, very few people know me. This institution's looking for a lift. Maybe they're having enrollment challenges, a brand crisis, reputational hurdles they have to overcome. How do you show up in this fractional position knowing that there's a lot of inertia, a lot of history? Politics are in every organization, certainly in higher ed institutions. So how do you show up in this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Initially when I show up, I do what most leaders do. They do a listening tour. And I think most people appreciate being listened to. I find that when you're part of a large organization, sometimes people just don't feel heard. And so that first part where I just go around and I meet people and I may ask one question and the floodgates open. And so people appreciate being heard, but they also want to hear that you have a plan for them. And so it's kind of walking that line between when am I to listen and when am I to share this plan, and also being careful not to overpromise and underdeliver. And so you want to make sure whatever that plan is something that is manageable and doable. But there's a lot of back and forth. There's the listening, there's the assessing. Do I have what I need to initiate this plan? Will I have sustained commitment to this plan? And so it is a bit of a back and forth of listening, making a plan, assessing, maybe reassessing, and making some adjustments along the way. And certainly as the communications person, being sure that people are made aware of where you're going and if there are any changes coming.
Let's go. I mean, there's only obviously when you're working in a consulting business like RW Jones, there's a lot of confidentiality involved in that. And there's things you just simply can't share. Maybe you could speak to the larger environment where, there's crises after crises. There was, over the last 2 years, there's been all sort of public relations challenges. Can you speak more largely to the industry where you've seen people react, where they find it for themselves unexpected, but maybe you've seen so much that you feel like it's not, and how you sort those conversations around where people are unprepared and you're there to bring them back to a level setting, saying, we can work through this. I've got experience in these kind of situations. This isn't the same, but it is the same.
I think what I've noticed most is most of our marketing and communications offices have been structured and have been operating like a newsroom because it's just been crisis after crisis after crisis. And so what I try to guide leadership on at institutions is there's no time to be strategic if the expectation is that your marketing and comms office functions like a newsroom. And what most institutions need right now is more of that strategic reputation and management as opposed to responding to crises. And I understand how we got here. I know that people are afraid of being perceived a certain way and having negative PR. But if we keep dialing back the strategy, the institutional reputation is going to suffer. And that's what I'm seeing as a collective concern, is just watching institutions not put in that strategic work to build up the reputation of how this institution is contributing to society, contributing to their cities, contributing to their state. I mean, there's a lot of benefit that comes from having a university or a college in a community. But if we're just always caught on our heels responding to crisis, we don't have time to build that reputation and tell that story. And that's what I'm saying. And that's what's most concerning to me right now, is I don't see enough strategy on reputation.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratSea.org. There's so much here. So the difference between strategic reputation management and crisis communication management.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've explained is that so much of higher ed for years and years has been in the latter category, in crisis communication management. Maybe in some ways trying to use some of the social media tools to create a reputation, but still caught up in dealing with crises and not thinking long term, how do we really build the reputation? In our organization, we know, having been around for almost 62 years, that the reputation has been built over that period of time. It's not going to be elevated in a year.
No,
And so how do
no.
we set sights on a long-term aspiration for we want the reputation to be accepting what the past is and the direction we want to go? I love that, maybe oversimplified, but that simple dichotomy of living in one or the other.
Yeah, and I guess there's something you said that I do want to clarify. The reputation piece does come from the past, and I do think that a lot of institutions have been resting on that reputation they had before. And it's not that crisis communication has been this, I think it's been more recent years, starting with COVID, and then we have had some administration challenges that have impacted higher education. I think this last 5 years has really been where that crisis communication focus and narrow focus has really hindered what institutions have been able to do and where they've spent their time. But the reputation also has been, because we have education, we have great faculty, we have all of these things. We don't even need to market because we've been this for 100 years. And that's where I think we have some tension as well. You still have to market because students have more options now. And it's not just whether or not to go to your institution or another one, it's whether to go at all. And so if you're not out there talking about the benefits, the value, you're not out there talking about your reputation, someone's going to create that for you. And you may not even be part of the compensation at all. And so I see that as a big concern right now for higher education is you've got those schools that think that they don't have to be part of the conversation because people just want to attend their institution. That's changing. But also this conversation around the value of higher education, which we've heard for quite some time. We have to be out there. We have to tell our story or someone's going to tell it for us.
Okay, so I don't know if I'm pushing on what you're saying a little bit or I'm just trying to elaborate it more. Because
Sure.
what I have found is that there's some institutions that don't want to wholly embrace what their reputation is, reputation externally, perceived,
Right.
and really embrace that for the value it presents. And on the other side, there's some who say, our reputation has been this all along. Why do we have to do anything? And so there's almost an over indulgence in this past. And again, the other side could be a lack of embracing what it was or is and letting that be a strength. So I just want to say I've seen both.
Yes.
And this could be in the corporate sector as well, right?
For sure. I mean, when I think about higher ed specifically, we have to think about some institutions where their mission has been, access. We provide opportunity for those that may not have. Those institutions didn't start out that way. A lot of institutions were very exclusionary when they started. And so there has to be a re-examining of what our mission was and what we stood for when we began. Is that still true? Does that still hold true now? So I definitely think that there are spaces where there needs to be a reevaluation of, are we still this institution? And for some schools, it's yes. And for some schools, it isn't.
Yeah. And given what you do as a fractional CMO for institutions, how do you engage in that conversation so that there can either be a re-examination of that and maybe a change in what we're trying to do in terms of strategic reputation management? Difficult for me to say clearly. Or the alternative is we don't want that to be our reputation, but maybe that's where their strength lies.
Yeah, and those are really, in my role, I'm really there to facilitate the conversation. usually my assignments are year-long assignments, and those are really big conversations. And so we may not be able to figure that out, but at least I am putting that on leadership's minds a bit so that they can figure out how they want to proceed with that. Because typically what I'm doing is helping them transition through a year, and I'll leave some of those tidbits for them to figure out, but it's not something that can be figured out in a senior year.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Tough.
And in some cases, depending on the organization, who's sitting in that president chancellor seat has a lot of influence as to where that goes. And as we know, those roles are not 10-year roles anymore. You're talking about 3 to 5 years at this point being an average. And that has a lot of influence on how that conversation goes as well.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I admire the work you do, the presence that you must bring to these roles. These are conversations that need to happen within many higher ed institutions, and I love that you're bringing that to them. Myla, this is where I'd love to transition to what I do in this podcast. I find a book, I look within it, and I find a quote that I think would really fit with this guest. And given what I do know about you, I think this quote does fit well, something I would love for you to respond to. The quote comes from a book called Emotional Agility, written by Susan David. And the quote goes like this: making hard choices can actually be liberating because it helps you define who you truly are and demonstrates the power we all have to shape our lives. You want me to read it one more time?
Yes, I like that. One more time.
Making hard choices can actually be liberating because it helps you define who you truly are and demonstrates the power we all have to shape our lives.
So I'm gonna have to get to a reading list, first of all. When I hear that, I think of a couple of things. So even in mere deliberating decisions, I feel like it presents us with an opportunity to assess how well we know what we value, what motivates us, how well we're in alignment with what we think and what we say and how we act. And essentially all of that boils down to who we are. And so when we intentionally and repeatedly assess our values, our motivators, our alignment and who we are, it does strengthen our ability to choose well based on our purpose and based on us becoming our truest self. And so each time we face a difficult decision, I feel like we have another opportunity to confirm our truest self. And to me, that's not just liberating, that's incredibly powerful. So that's what I hear when I hear that quote.
And have you made hard choices?
Every day. No, I do think that you make hard choices. And it's funny because my brother and I have had conversations about, you have to choose your hard. And so I live in California. My family's from the Midwest. What's hard for me is being physically distant from my family. But I make that choice because when I think of my truest self, I feel more at peace and like myself on the West Coast. I don't know if it's the ocean air, the palm trees, the sunshine, but I think it would be more difficult for me to be in the Midwest and have a close proximity to my family, knowing how I live in California. So I make hard decisions all the time, but I feel confident that I'm able to make the best decision for me because I am constantly checking and trying to be intentional about how I live my life.
Yeah, I have all confidence that that's true. Again, I've seen and listened and read much of what you post on LinkedIn. You seem so intentional about how you live and how you speak. I'm sure that's also, in fact, how you live each day. Myla, this has been inspiring for me. I Always appreciate your voice of wisdom and insight. Is there one last piece of advice you would give to a group of people out there about how to live professionally, personally, how to progress in their own career, how to make hard choices?
Yes, I think advice for me is there's a crossover between that professional and personal. And I would say live on purpose. And for me, it has a double meaning in that you want to live with intention and you're not just haphazardly going through life and, watching life happen to you, but also live on purpose in that we all have a purpose. And so how are we making decisions that align with that purpose? That would be my advice. And I think that plays out well in my professional setting too. I don't want to walk into spaces where I'm not being intentional about what I say and what I'm thinking about and what I spend my time on, how I'm engaging with people. So my advice professionally and personally would be to live in purpose.
It's a beautiful ending. Live on purpose. Live within your purpose. We all try to do that the best we can. The older we get, the easier it seems to get, I think.
Well, we did more practice at it, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Myla, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck with your current role. I hope it goes well. And maybe we'll meet up in that lovely city that is always close to my heart.
I hope so. Good to see you, Scott.
All right. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semesteratsea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.